Today, we are diving fully into the topic of self-love. I have the founder of Bolt Actve. It's a clothing company. Her name is Ria. She's 21 years old, and we are going to talk about changing limiting beliefs, empowering ourselves, taking the very first steps towards our dreams, and just about everything in between. So let's dive in. So a couple weeks ago, I had a major procedure done all the way in New York. And before I left on my trip, my sister, who's 12 years older than me, she gifted me this amazing sweatshirt. The front says Self-Love Club with a little heart. And then the back, which is really cool, says Self-Love World Tour, kind of like how you see attire for like concert promotion. And it has all these affirmations on it that have to do with loving who you are. And so my sister gifted me this shirt and said that she had met this woman who is the founder of this company called Bolt Actve. And she told me about how amazing this woman was, and I thought, wow, how cool that somebody at only 21 years old has created a clothing line to empower people through self-love. So I'm really excited because that woman that I'm talking about is sitting right next to me today. Ria, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
First off, can you just briefly tell me how you even met my sister? And by the way, for people listening, this is my first time meeting Ria. I literally picked her up from her house, brought her to my house for this podcast. We have barely even had a full conversation together. This is actually going to be our first real conversation.
Right. Yeah, so I feel like it was a divine experience. Everything kind of just fell into my lap because I know that that little tiny corner coffee shop is hidden. And when I was driving, I noticed that it was obviously open. So I went in, checked it out. I was honestly having like a bad day. I didn't really want to be productive or like leave my house, but I decided to just send it anyway and make myself a little bit happier with, you know, the sense of feeling accomplished. So I just went in and I brought the same one.
You brought the sweatshirt.
Yeah, the same self-love hoodie, wore it, and I actually asked this girl if she could take a couple of pictures of me because the coffee shop is super aesthetic and ambient, and I thought it would be really good for content. And then all of a sudden I had her asking me about it, like, oh, like, what is this for, blah, blah, blah. And then I gave her the rundown, like, oh, I designed this. I just kind of needed content for my business. And crazily enough, I feel like it all was divinely orchestrated to be talking to the manager, and she hosts like the markets and invited me to it, a free event that she invited Bolts to be a part of, which was awesome, and I'm glad I'm doing that. And then another girl came up to me, said that she loved it, wanted to be a part of like the content as well, like modeling it. She was also like an actual model as a career, so she was like, yeah, I'd love to like help you with your content, which is awesome. And finally, your sister Allie, I got to talk to her, and she was like, oh, I think it would be like a great thing for my sister, and we kind of just connected from there.
That's so crazy, because obviously when my sister met you in this coffee shop and she saw your self-love sweatshirt, she was thinking of me because she knew that I was going into a procedure and that I would need the emotional support.
Right.
And she obviously bought the sweatshirt. She gifted it to me. And now you and I are friends, and we're sitting here today. So I just want to point out how you never know where one connection can lead you.
Exactly.
And in this case, I didn't even create this connection. My sister did.
Right.
But if you weren't the one putting yourself out there, you would have never reached somebody like me. And it's really shows the power of taking risks.
Right.
And you just don't know what can happen when you walk into a coffee shop one day.
Exactly.
Right? So anyway, I'm having you on the podcast because I really want to hear the story behind why you started this clothing company called Bolt Actve and what the inspiration is behind these self-love sweatshirts that you've created. But I also just want to talk about like the journey of self-love and what that really entails from your perspective and your life journey. So it's going to be an interesting episode because I've really never talked to you before. So I'm going to be asking a lot of deep questions, and I'm going to share my own input too on my journey with self-love as we go. So let's just really dive in. I want to start off with clarifying that you are 21 years old and you have a company that you are the founder of. One thing that I've noticed with people in our age group, and actually people of all ages, is that they say that they want something, but that day never comes along where they actually take action. And you're clearly an anomaly in that this was a dream and you literally have tangible clothing that you can sell people. So tell us about like your journey in having a vision for what you wanted and then executing it. Talk to me about like the timeline of that.
Right. So Bolt is actually around 3 years old, but it didn't really start taking off until maybe 8 months ago, which is crazy, the power of persistence. There was a point where I even wanted to quit, but my best friend was like, are you crazy? Like, continue, because you never know what'll happen like right before you quit. It could be like the major breakthrough. And she was obviously right. So it just goes to show the power of persistence. But initially my vision started from a personal story. And I think a lot of founders and business owners can relate to that, or just a personal pain point or something that they know a lot of people can relate to. And they wanted to create that container to solve that problem. And so for me, it was feeling a lack of inclusion in the fitness space, especially the weightlifting space, which is obviously has been male dominated. It's changing now, which is amazing. But I always felt like I couldn't be in the weight room just as a small, young little girl who didn't really know much initially, right? No one knows initially. And so I felt empowered teaching myself the ways of, movement and weightlifting in a space where traditionally I wasn't represented in. And I wanted to create a fitness clothing line due to the fact that I felt there was no space for females, and not only females, but, people of different sizes being represented in the fitness industry. And so that was my way of doing that. It kind of evolved over the years to be more empowering for everyone, not just for weightlifters, because it's styles that you can wear both inside the gym and outside the gym. And so that's kind of where the vision originated, and it's always growing as I as a person am growing as well.
So you're saying that you've had this passion for weightlifting and you're a gym goer, and your clothing line actually started as more of a fitness brand, where your clothing was geared to clothes that you could work out in. And then you're saying that you had an epiphany where you realized that you could create different clothing that wasn't just clothing you could wear in the gym, but that was empowering clothing with messages that could resonate with a lot more people, that could also have more accessibility for people in terms of the sizing.
Right, for sure. And initially it started off with like the traditional activewear, sports bras, leggings, shorts, that sort of stuff. And then I realized that what I was selling wasn't matching my vision and mission. So that's when I'd made the shift, and it turned out to be a really good success because I was able to use the messaging and those inspirational quotes in a way that most people haven't seen before, in a niche that most people haven't seen before.
Okay, cool. It's interesting to see the evolution. Like, I think actually what's interesting about that is that you can have a vision for what you want and not necessarily know exactly what like the end game is going to be. And I think that's a reason why a lot of people don't take action initially on their dreams, is because they don't know what the big picture is going to look like, right? And what I want to say is that that big picture can actually change, and you might even find clarity about really what you want to create in regard to your goal as you're taking action. So a lot of people mistake that, and they think I have to have all the answers before I get started on my dream. But really, for me, the answers have actually unfolded with time and action.
Right.
It's actually what's helped me decide what direction I want to go in with my personal brand, for instance.
Exactly.
So it seems like that's kind of what happened to you. You started out having an idea that you wanted to have this fitness brand, and then you kind of shifted the styles of your clothing. And so it's great for people to hear that, like, you don't have to be 100% sure of exactly what it's going to look like.
Right.
But you just got to start somewhere.
Exactly.
So going back to my question initially is, think about the amount of people who have a dream, a goal, a vision, and they tell themselves one day, and they just never get around to actually doing it. They don't make progress on reaching that goal. Can you go back to that time when you first had the vision? Were you able to just immediately take action and produce sweatshirts? Or was there some doubt? Like, what did it really take to actually get started mentally?
Right. I feel like there was a lot of conflicting like messaging, not just from myself, but from the people around me. It just seemed like something that was kind of out of the blue, and that kind of came from nowhere, because before this, I haven't proven myself to be any sort of entrepreneurial background or interest in the past. So it kind of just came out of nowhere. I was like, the imposter syndrome kicked in, like, who am I to be doing this? I actually like took the savings that I had from like working like, part-time job and invested that into the inventory. And obviously it was an expensive like investment into myself, and I didn't know how it would turn out. But on the other hand, it's like, what's the investment on not trying, right? So you have to kind of flip that perspective of what would it be like if you didn't try. If you fail, then oh well, or if you decide that you don't like it or you like something else more, then oh well. Just to add on to your point of the one day but never trying it, you can still try, and it might not go as you planned initially, but at least you know what it would have been like. Yeah.
So what you're saying is, like, you always have to consider what the risk is of not pursuing something you want.
Right.
Because yes, there are a whole lot of risks to pursue what you want. You have to really get uncomfortable. You have to put yourself out there. You have to risk rejection, disappointment, changing plans. I mean, there's a million and one things we could talk about in terms of what could go wrong, right? But if you're going to consider all those things, you also have to consider, what would your life be like if you do not pursue what you want? You'll live with regret. You'll never actually experience the growth that comes with chasing after something that's scary and hard. You will, feel envious or jealous of people around you who are doing what you want to do, but you don't have the courage to do it. I mean, there is a lot of risks in not following your calling in life. And so that's a fantastic point to make, is that either way, whether you follow your dream or you don't follow it, you're still going to experience risk. And you're going to experience discomfort and hard times. But the question is, which decision is going to help you evolve, is going to help you get closer to the life that you really want to live? Obviously, it's the decision to pursue the things that are going to lead to the life you want to live, right? Not pursuing it is definitely not going to get you closer to the life you want to live. It's going to get you the furthest away that you possibly can go. So I am like just so thrilled that you were able to take that risk for yourself and pursue this. But talk to me a little bit about things you had to work through internally to be someone who can now be the founder of a clothing company.
Like I mentioned before, the imposter syndrome, I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that, and it's always going to be something that stays with you, because new levels as they say, each level and growing as a person, also as a business owner, there's going to be issues that you haven't had to deal with in the past. So it's like confronting this, well, I've never had to deal with this in the past, like, who am I? But that's always just a subconscious limiting belief, and understanding that and coming to the habit of, I have this negative belief about myself, but immediately switching it or turning it into something positive. Like, oh, I have never dealt with this before, but changing that perspective to, however, I can grow from this, or, I'm doing the best with what I can at this time, just being gentle with yourself. That's a big thing that has stuck with me for a while. And I also do really well with timelines. So if I set these negative perspectives of myself, I give myself like the timeline of like, okay, I'm instead of this paralysis analysis, I'm just going to go for it and give myself, okay, I'm going to complete this project by X date, and just really diving into it, because you will hold yourself back.
So you're saying that one of the things that helped you get through the self-doubt and starting your clothing line is putting a timeline on the action steps that you knew you had to take to make this happen.
Right.
And that no matter what, when that day comes, you just had to follow through, you're saying.
Right. Because like I mentioned, the combination of imposter syndrome and also the fear and not knowing what happens at that next level, because we're all used to staying at the point that we are right now. We're afraid to go to the next level because we don't know what will happen. We've never been there before. There's lots of new challenges and new endeavors. And just the combination of all those things, you really need to get to a point where you train yourself to just go for it and almost like disassociate from your ego. And just as a business owner, the business isn't about me, right? Like, I'm separating myself from this different entity and just going into it like that.
Wow,
Yeah.
you're so mature.
Thank you.
You're 21 years old, but you talk like you've lived,
Yeah, thank you.
much more life.
I do feel like that sometimes, but I also have the youth and the experiences like of someone my age as well.
Yeah. So just going back on what you just said, I think that something everybody needs to know is that we all have imposter syndrome.
Right.
We all have thoughts about whether we're qualified to be doing the things we want to do, whether we're pretty enough, confident enough, smart enough, resourceful enough, brave enough, experts enough. I mean, the list goes on and on.
Right.
I don't think anybody in this world hasn't once thought about whether they're the person to do what they envision themselves doing.
Right.
So let me just make that clear. Before I started making content and before I had the Co-Elevate with Shayna brand, I laid in bed the night before that I had launched my videos and I thought, oh my God, I don't know everything. I'm not an expert. Who's gonna listen to me? What if I teach something that's incorrect? I had the same hesitations and doubts and insecurities that maybe some of you who are listening have yourself. And let's just normalize that, okay? Because I think part of the problem is people think they're the only ones who are insecure. And it's just not true. Even the most confident people have insecurities. People see me and they think that I just go after what I want and whatever I say I'm gonna do, I do, and it's true. But if you're listening and you're thinking, she probably doesn't have any self-doubt or fears, that is totally incorrect.
Right. Yeah.
So thank you for just bringing attention to the imposter syndrome that is kind of like a buzzword now. I think another important point about what you're saying is that when we're doing something we've never done before, the imposter syndrome is going to be even stronger because we are going into uncharted territories. Our brain's primary job in life is to keep us safe. So when we're going into uncharted territory, our brain freaks out and says, I don't know how to keep you safe from this because I've never done this before. So you have to just understand like what the purpose is and why you get so afraid and doubtful of yourself and why you develop that imposter syndrome. It goes back to safety. So you're not going to actually fully know what you're doing until you start doing it. And you're gonna learn along the way and it's gonna be a bumpy ride, but that's actually how you're gonna become the expert. You don't start out as an expert when you've never done something. You start out as a beginner. And that's one thing that I hope everybody is hearing is that whatever dream you have inside of you, are you willing to be a beginner at pursuing that dream? That's my number one question. Because if you're willing to be a beginner, then you're going to tap into the courage that it takes to basically be an imposter and put yourself out there, even if you don't feel like you have the most credibility in the room. So when I started podcasting, I had no idea what I was doing. If you go look at my other YouTube videos from my earlier episodes, The way that I filmed them is absolutely terrible. The angles are so messed up. I have learned so much about podcasting and how to do it in a better way through messing up a bunch of times.
Yeah.
So I didn't go into podcasting saying I'm an expert at podcasting. And when I finally feel like I've mastered every skill that podcasting entails, then I'm going to start my first episode. No, I barely did any research. I just turned the camera on. I filmed it in a really, imperfect way. And now here I am getting better and better every time I do it.
Right.
So tell me something that you've learned about yourself in the process of creating this clothing line.
I think that my perspectives on disadvantages have changed because there always is a silver lining to it. So for example, like my age is an obvious one. Being younger, I had this fear that I wouldn't be taken as seriously, and I shifted that to being an advantage of myself. Like, oh, I can relate to my target audience better, just an example. And it was definitely more of a disadvantage that I had placed in my own head than the actual reality. The actual reality of it is I actually don't want to do business with people who feel that way of, oh, I'm not to be taken seriously because of my age. And it's actually more normalized and pretty common to have young founders in this day and age because of the information age that we live in. It's also really good for PR. So just kind of shifting the perspective and getting in the habit of all the negative thoughts that I have are lies, because any story that we can tell ourselves, if we truly believe it, it becomes real. And not just in a law of attraction sense, but there's evidence for any sort of thing that we convince ourselves. So just shifting that perspective of, oh, this is a disadvantage I have. No, I learned about myself that anything could be an advantage. Also the working style. So I have ADHD. So I always figured, like in school in the past, like I'm not smart, or I struggle in school, or I struggle to learn. No, I was just being placed in an environment that didn't stick with my working style. So I learned you can always adapt and always change the perspective and change the narrative no matter where you are. And that's just something that I apply to, like, not just business, but my life as well.
Cool.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is, as you launched Bolt Actve, you found that all these beliefs that were holding you back, that were limiting beliefs, disempowering beliefs, whatever you want to call them,
right,
you found a way to reframe those beliefs and think of how you could turn them into something that could be positive, that could be an advantage for you. And that's really helped you, build your confidence in being the founder of this business, because you just think of things in a totally different light.
Yeah, obviously it takes time, and it's obviously easier said than done, but I think that's what I've created, not just the literal brand, but a personal brand around shifting that perspective, changing that narrative, and taking something that could be seen as negative into a positive. That's obviously where the self-love came from.
I love that.
Thank you.
And that is such a gift in and of itself, to be someone who is able to reframe ways of thinking that are limiting and disempowering into ways that actually support your evolution and your dreams as well. So for people listening who have these different fears that they know are holding them back in their life, first off, just be aware of what those beliefs are. Then ask yourself, what purpose do these beliefs serve? Oh, they help me stay in my comfort zone. Oh, they keep me, small, so that I don't really get to experience what it's like to be powerful, because I'm afraid of what my power might be.
Right.
So we all have different payoffs and hidden benefits for believing these disempowering things about ourselves. You got to find out what that is, and then you've got to figure out how you can possibly create new beliefs that are going to be your kind of guiding light as you pursue these scary, hard, uncomfortable actions in your life. So you said that you've had this brand for 5 years now? The clothing line?
Yeah, so it started in 2020, so 3 coming up to 4, but things didn't really kick off until last year.
Until the 5th year that you were in business. So what do you say to someone who maybe is already pursuing a dream of theirs, but they're not seeing a ton of movement or progress on the results? Like for me, I have a personal brand. Early on, I didn't get that many likes or comments or followers. What do you say to the person who is in those beginning stages that's getting a little discouraged by the lack of progress they're making?
Something a couple years ago that my mentor had told me, and it was very literal, looking at a funnel, and that is a concept that could be applied to anything. And it's, if something works, then continue doing it and figure out how to scale it. And if something doesn't work, then figure out how to make it, like how to shift it or how to iterate it in order to make it work for you. And so at a bigger scale, what does that look like? If you're running ads, but this specific creative hasn't gotten you any money, and then stop wasting your time after a certain amount of, ad spend. Obviously, this can be applied to many different examples, and that was just one of them. However, I think it's just the concept of fail fast and learn quickly, and being able to take the ego out of it and recognize that if something isn't working, then why are we continuing to do it? And if something is working, then why are you holding yourself back from scaling that? So that's when that negative limiting beliefs come in hand, right? So if something is working, then let's continue pushing into it and not holding ourselves back from what that next level will be.
Yeah, so I'm hearing that you have to kind of be okay with adjusting your situation and doing more of what's working for you and less of what isn't working. And that just takes really kind of doing a deep dive on your actions, like being reflective and looking at, okay, like if you're a content creator, what content is performing better? What are people engaging with the most? Repeat more of that. So with clothing, what sweatshirts are selling more? And so I think that's great to be able to take a couple steps back and really think about, how you're going about different things. And if you do need to readjust, then do that. Don't be afraid to pivot. And I think I've even seen that just in my job. I'm around very high level business people, including the CEO of my company. And I see how quickly he's comfortable with changing things within the business, testing things out to see what works best. And I think there's something to be said about that. And like you said, it's really about trial and error. You got to put yourself out there. You got to try different things. And that's the only way that you're going to see what's landing for people and what's generating more money for you, or what's really like speaking to whoever your target audience is. Trial and error, people. So you are going to fail, right? You are going to do things incorrectly or imperfectly. But like I told you about my podcasting experience, that's exactly how you become the expert. It's really actually difficult to keep pursuing something without knowing what the end result is going to be, right? Like for me, I've been making content for 2.5 years, and I don't actually know like exactly where this is going to lead me. And I want to be successful and obviously generate a lot of money following my passion, because money will help me impact people. But is that guaranteed? Absolutely not. Does it scare me to think that I could just fail at this? Of course it does. But there's something really important about being able to trust the process. And I'm sure you can relate to this, 100%. Is just really having faith in the journey and letting it unfold as is. What can you tell us about that experience? Because I know you've just been in business for, a couple of years now, and you've gone through some difficult times. What has it been like for you in trusting your journey?
Yeah, I mean, going off of what you had said, counterintuitively, it's almost like taking pressure off of the big goal of, I'm so attached to this one thing, and I need, I'll just give an example, like X amount of money this year or X amount of followers, and just being so hyper fixated on that can actually drift you away from it, because it's not about the impact anymore. It's not about the help that you're bringing to the world. It's not about you being self-expressive and creative and benefiting, your purpose. And when you get so hyper fixated on that goal, obviously it's great to have goals, but enjoying the process is more important than having that goal in mind. And obviously goals will change. So I think taking that pressure off can help you, because counterintuitively, when I created self-love, I wasn't thinking that it would make me this much money or I would have this many opportunities because of it and my life would change forever. It was just something that I was creating because I needed it personally, and I also knew that it would help others. And through that, people sensed that energy and they just enjoyed it and resonated with it. And that's when the goal started to unfold. So just taking that pressure off of it and really falling in love with the process and seeing where that takes you.
Yeah, what you're saying is it's not about the end result. It's about who you become in the process of pursuing the result.
Right, yeah.
So it's very true. I mean, I can speak for myself because, like I said, I've been a content creator for a long time now, because I actually started when I was a little kid, but I have absolutely become more confident and more bold and courageous in my life as a result of having my personal brand, as a result of making videos. I did not go into having a personal brand with 100% confidence, 100% courage. No, I built that through the content creation. It's important to really get clear on your goals and what you want and to be specific about what that looks like. Yes, there's value in that. But really, you have to, enjoy the process along the way. And I think that's where it comes back to do something you're passionate about, because it won't feel like work to you when you're going after something that's important to you. It won't. It will feel like you're just really leaning into what you came on this earth to do, which is what I call a calling or a purpose.
Right.
And if that's being, a influencer online and posting videos of you styling yourself, that's a calling. That's a purpose. Some people think that when you say have a purpose and a calling in life, that it has to be something extremely deep.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's the case. I think it's simply, what are you passionate about? What keeps you up at night? What concerns you in the world? What pains you? Like, what are you bothered by in people, about life? What are you bothered by, and how can you be a part of the solution to that?
Right.
And I know for me, I was just bothered by the fact that I felt so alone in my struggles a couple of years ago when I was trying to find clarity around my sexuality. I felt so alone in understanding my sexuality because none of my other friends would talk about it. And so when I learned about what demisexuality was, which is being attracted to a person after an emotional connection, I didn't know anyone else that associated themselves with being demisexual.
Yeah.
And so I spent a lot of time thinking I was the only one. Something was wrong with me, and there was no one else that could possibly understand me that I could open up to about it. So that bothered me right there. It bothered me that people my age were not talking about real life struggles and challenges that we all deal with. And because it bothered me so much, I created a personal brand around helping women feel a little less alone. That's why I'm so vocal about my experiences in my life. So think about what bothers you and create your vision and your dreams around the solution, your solution to that thing. If you think people out there have no style and they don't know the latest trends, go make content teaching people how to have style and what the latest trends are.
Right.
I don't know if you can think of examples, but I think people get really stuck in figuring out what their purpose is. And I just want to tell people it does not have to be this earth-shattering, world-changing movement that you start.
Right.
It can be something actually fairly simple.
Yeah. And it's that overthinking that almost is the self-sabotage, right? Just let go and see where you feel led. And I just completely relate to what you're saying. Like, people want to consume content, or people want to buy, or people just relate to people who are similar to them and share their own experiences. They don't want to look up to someone who is like insanely like, I don't know, Kim Kardashian levels, because they're not relatable. And so someone who's a couple of steps ahead of you and has some things figured out, but still learning across the way and sharing those experiences and being open about the fact that, hey, I don't know everything. I'm still learning, but this is what's on my mind right now. And you can, relate to me and I can help you from my personal experiences. That is someone who I personally would want to follow and want to look up to and want to connect with.
Yeah. You mentioned something earlier about something that your mentor had told you. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about the value of having mentors in our life. I mean, what has been your experience with having a mentor?
Yeah, it's very...
How did you find the mentor? Who is this person? Tell me.
It was online through a like Discord group of e-com people and just other people who are trying to build their own online businesses. And he owns a very successful and like a vape, but of melatonin, and it did really well. And so I took, courses from him, and I was in a group chat with him and a bunch of other people. In terms of business, and not just business, but life, I do have a lot of mentors, and I don't even mind like paying. Just for example, like I know from a surface level perspective what I need to do, but someone holding me accountable, someone saying, okay, like I know you had a bad week and this is what happened, let's shift that, or let's, work through it and figure out why this happened. Just someone there to look at you objectively, because we can look at ourselves in a completely different way, both physically and metaphorically, from our growth and from our goals. We look at ourselves not as other people see us. And so when someone's there to look at you objectively and look at your problems objectively and just be a third party and say, hey, this is what you need to do, that helped me so much. And not just, like I said, in business, but in life and in bodybuilding and this, that, and the other, just having someone there. And it can come in many different spaces. Like I have an accountability partner. We text each other every day, every weekday, of what we're doing that day. And if we didn't do something, we explain like why and how we can fix it. And so I think people think mentor and they think something so like extreme, like you had said, and it could literally just be like a family friend or someone who maybe knows a little bit more about you in some sort of capacity, and just having that mutually beneficial relationship.
I think that's freaking fabulous.
Yeah.
I'm literally over here just like blown away that you're 21. I've said that 3 times, I think, but it just really does shock me that you're as young as you are and you're over here talking about how you don't mind paying for mentors, because that's one thing I've also noticed with people who are in their 20s, even 30s, I mean, all ages, again. People don't want to spend the money to invest in a coach or a personal development training if it's thousands of dollars. And I'm like, what's the cost of not pursuing your dream? What's the cost of living the same life you've been living for years and years and years, living in your comfort zone, living with the results that, living with no results as far as your dreams and passions go? What's the cost of that? I imagine it's pretty sad and frustrating, right? So what are you willing to do about it? You've got to invest time and money into people who are going to have your back. And I really don't want to back down on that, because I have personally spent thousands of dollars on developing myself through coaches, mentors, trainings, programs, workshops. I've flown across the country to do different things that I knew would help me evolve. And people are not willing to spend a dime on a therapist, a coach, a training. Like, people need to wake up to this. I don't care if you're 21 years old, if you're, I don't care like what your situation is. If you want something bad enough, you will put in the work
Oh, absolutely.
to hire someone that's going to help you get there. I know everybody has different circumstances, but there's a point where you have to stop letting your circumstances dictate how far you're going to go in life. And people often stop at a circumstance. They stop at, well, I don't have enough time. Well, I don't have enough money. It's a story. It is fully a story. Like, you will make time, you will generate money for the things that you really care about.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I love that you're saying that, like, you're not afraid to spend money on a mentor. And like you said, you don't have to spend money on a mentor necessarily. A mentor could be a friend of yours that's doing what you want to do. That's just a couple steps ahead of you, that's willing to support you. And maybe you could even trade, services that you have with them in exchange. Like, you got to get creative.
Exactly.
But I would say one thing is for sure, you do have to spend money on the thing you're passionate about pursuing. That's what I'm saying. Like, you've got to invest in developing yourself as a person, because you're the person that's going to be executing on your goals. So if you don't freaking fill your own cup consistently and give to yourself, nourish yourself, you're going to be the biggest thing in your own way.
Exactly.
It's blunt, but I feel very strongly about that.
No, I do as well. And to add on to that, don't think that you need to just read a bunch of books and have mentors and do courses and just sit there and twiddle your thumbs. You do unfortunately need to do the hard work from these trainings and from these mentors and what the books and podcasts, what all they say, and be honest with yourself on if you're taking that and applying it to your life, because it doesn't matter how many, trainings or workshops or mentors you have. If you're not being honest with yourself and putting that into action, then it's worth nothing.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I felt like that was very important to say.
Great point.
Thank you.
It's so true. None of the things that I mentioned, personal development trainings, a therapist, a coach, a mentor, whatever, none of that is going to get you the result. Just having it doesn't do anything.
Right.
It's your consistent actions that create the result. And also, like, if you're listening and you're like, oh my God, she has no idea what my circumstance are. Like, do you know how much money we spend a month on Starbucks or on clothes or on going out to dinner with our friends or on alcohol?
Yeah.
I mean, people, come on. I bet if you're in your 20s and you're listening to this right now and you're saying to yourself, I don't have enough money to invest in myself, to get a coach, to get a therapist, to go to a training, just think about alone how much money you probably spend drinking alcohol.
Yeah.
I mean, for real, set aside all the money you spend on ordering drinks at dinner and set that aside into a fund to develop yourself.
Right.
Because that one day might not ever come along. And that's something I really, really want to make sure that people hear is like, stop waiting, right? There's this really viral clip of Mel Robbins, the motivational speaker. She's like, stop waiting. Tomorrow, you could literally get hit by a bus. It's like a viral sound clip that she used. It's freaking true. Like, I really live by tomorrow's not promised. And I think we really take advantage of the fact that, like, we think we have so much more life to live, but you just don't know what will happen in your life or in the world going forward that will make things a lot harder for you. So just freaking start now. Start with one little action. Like, something I try to do as soon as I know that I want to do something is I take action immediately in some way, shape, or form. So like last week, I just decided 100% that I'm going to start investing in wholesaling real estate. Saturday, I spent my whole day making a vision board for wholesaling real estate for myself. And that was one action step I took, because that vision is going to be important in helping me continuously take action when it gets hard. And so I want people listening to realize that the second you know you want to pursue something, immediately do something that's like related to your goal. If it's spending a bunch of money investing in something, do that. That'll put your ass on the line. A vision board alone is not going to help, right? But it's something that will lead me to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. So it all adds up. and don't overlook those little action steps that you need to take to just get yourself started.
No, absolutely. I'm a big advocate for as soon as you have that idea, immediately work on it. It doesn't matter like where you are, like take a note of it if you can't right then and there, but it usually takes less time than you're hyping it up to be. And it's usually easier than you're hyping it up to be. And oftentimes we forget or we procrastinate. So a big advocate for doing things immediately.
For sure.
Yeah.
I also, when I was living in San Diego over a year ago, I had this vision that I am going to write a book. And I had the vision. I immediately journaled it into my phone. And the next day, I drove to the bookstore. I envisioned where my book would be inside of Barnes and Nobles. I had a representative in the store take a video of me declaring that I was going to write a book. And then days later, I started actually writing the book. Now I sit here and I'm a little pissed because the date that I gave myself in that video, I've completely passed. And now it's like, I should have given myself way more wiggle room in terms of when I wanted the book to be out by, because I've totally procrastinated on the book.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Yes, I said I was going to write a book. Yes, I've been slacking off in writing it. I'm just going to be honest and real. But because I already took the action of writing tons of pages in the book, I'm going to pursue writing the book, because I can't live with knowing that I started something and I haven't finished it.
Right.
So because I immediately took those actions to write my book, now I feel way more compelled to finish the book. Exactly. And that's why I say what I'm saying to people is, hey, the second you get that vision in your mind, the second you see yourself doing something, you're seeing it for a reason. That vision was planted inside of you because it's part of your life path. It's part of what you do need to pursue in this life. Go ahead and immediately figure out something that you can do to work towards that vision.
Yeah. I mean, I think the book example is one of the best ones because that's a big project to undertake, but the only way you can take a big project is going step by step, and you're already gone through the first couple of steps and you might as well finish it, right?
Yeah. So just going back to Bolt Actve, your clothing company, tell me like where you're at now in the company. I mean, you said you've grown a lot. You just walk me through like what the progression of this has been for you.
Yeah. So like I said, the first couple of years, things were slow. I was still trying to figure things out, which is perfectly fine and normal. I think we glamorize the whole like, okay, next day, like look at my sales, the Shopify screenshots, which most of the time are fake. I think we glamorize those quick turnarounds, and when in reality, you still probably like need to be working like a part-time job or a full-time job or like grinding on the side. And it's a very slow, gradual buildup. And not to say that you shouldn't be taking every single day opportunity to make the most out of it, but still I think that we need to remember that for most people that it's a slow build up. So like I said, the first couple of years I was still trying to figure things out. Sales were a little bit slow. It was more like a side hustle or a hobby more than anything. But over time I put myself out there, started doing more in-person markets and seeing how things went from there, testing, what if I like put this here, or what if I was more vocal with, standing outside the booth and talking to people and just being more organic that way, just testing different things out, looking at the sales from those market weekends and seeing, okay, like I did good this weekend, I did not so good this weekend, and just growing and putting myself out there in different markets, different audiences, stuff like that. And then when I created Self-Love Club, it was right before my first really big national event. So people from all over the country were coming for this national powerlifting event. And I remember I only brought like 30 or something. It was a small one because it was my first time putting that out there into the world. I didn't know if people would like that. It was like a 5-day event. And like I mentioned before, divinely orchestrated. It was like a $4,000 vendor fee, and I asked the guy, I was like, I unfortunately can't do that. So I wasn't even trying to negotiate. He was just like, okay, yeah, like no big deal. Like let's cut it in half. And then I get there and it was supposed to be like a 10 by 10 booth. And it ended up being like this whole thing. He was like, yeah, sorry. Like we just gave you more tables. Like we don't know what to do with them. And I was like, okay, like very divinely orchestrated. But that was my first time doing that event and doing an event of that capacity. And so by the second day, I was sold out. And people were just like, how, like where did they go? And I was just like, well, I didn't think this many people would like them. By the same event coordinators, I got invited to an expo in Anaheim. So that was my first one out of state. And again, divinely orchestrated. I was supposed to go out there that weekend anyway. So it all kind of worked out. I went to Anaheim and then things kind of snowballed from there. I went to Tennessee, just kind of got invited to different things and just growing from there. I was planning on moving to Houston, Texas, because that's where the industry is like really popping right now. And things didn't work out, but obviously moving is like kind of a big financial burden. And so when I had to come back home, I kind of started from ground zero again. Really took a toll on like my mental, like, oh, like I had so much momentum and I had a plan out there and now I'm back home, which I didn't really love the idea of that, and just kind of building myself back up. And so that's kind of where we are right now. I am planning to be in Seattle next month. And so I think I'm getting to a point where I'm taking my ego down, like, okay, if I need to pick up another job to reinvest back into Bolt and, you know, start from ground zero again, I know that I'm capable of doing it. Like one downfall doesn't mean I can stay there. I can just get back to where I was.
Wow.
So yeah, that's where we are.
First off, just congratulations on your growth. And, you know, once this was just an idea and here you are going to different events, even out of your hometown. And that's really impressive. It's really a huge achievement to have what you have, even if it's not exactly where you want to be, you will get there.
Right.
And I love that you are just willing to do whatever it takes. So you mentioned Self-Love Club, and I think it's important that we go over that because it's literally on these sweatshirts, right?
So big.
So what's your take on self-love? Because I feel like that is thrown around so much. Just love yourself. Well, what the hell does that even mean? And how the hell do you love yourself when you just don't love yourself? Like people make it sound so easy. Can we just be real? What is your take on that?
Yeah, it's very like turned into commercialized Hallmark, very like space masks and like spa days with the girlies. And I mean, that could be it, but it definitely is way bigger than that. And to me, and it's different for everyone, but I think to me, the biggest part was self-acceptance. And being able to accept like who you are, all the different like tiny random quirks about yourself, both physically, emotionally, spiritually, this, that, and the other. And along with self-acceptance, stepping away from things that don't align with acceptance of who you are. Not only acceptance, but just, you know, environments and situations that are comfortable but aren't aligning with who you are, or who you want to be, or holding you back from your true potential. And I mean, I struggle saying this because it's something that I obviously have grown a lot from, and it's something that happened in the past, and I was able to grow and pick myself back up, but it's always going to be an ongoing life struggle. That's always going to be something that people, not just me, are going to not suffer, but struggle with.
Yeah. I love one of the statements on here, actually several of them, right?
Yeah, go for it.
I love this. I accept only the best for myself. I am the prize. I'm independent. I'm deserving of good things. I am desirable. I mean, I think every woman and every person listening can benefit from any one of these affirmations, and everybody might be drawn to a different one. I would say for me, when I look at this sweatshirt and I see the affirmation, I am desirable, that really like hits home for me. Because when I was dating initially and I hadn't ever had a boyfriend, I truly did not think that I was desirable. Like I just felt like I didn't have these certain qualities that I saw other women have. I didn't see myself as like a very feminine, fun, sensual, sexual person that I thought that's what the only thing that men wanted.
Exactly.
And like, I don't think of myself as desirable typically, but I think that's so important to know that you are desirable and that there's definitely people who see you in that way and who want to be with you. And that just really resonates with me because, like I said, at one point I didn't really see myself as desirable, and I think that belief led me to thinking that I would never be able to be in a relationship because who would want to be with me knowing that I'm very different than other girls?
Exactly.
So it's like, affirmations, I feel like people really hate them.
Yeah.
And I think that like we just need to figure out what works for us, because I know that like for me, it probably wouldn't work for me to just get in front of a mirror and say, I'm desirable, I'm worthy, I'm loved, if I really don't believe that deep down.
Yeah.
I think that there's a lot that really goes into it. It's not simply waking up one day, looking in the mirror and saying things about yourself that you don't believe.
Exactly.
I think that's a little big of a jump for certain people. So what do you say to people who don't really resonate with like affirmations in the mirror?
Yeah.
Have you found that there's something more underneath that people can benefit from?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely understand that. And for me, it took months to get to the point of even being comfortable. Like if you told me a year ago that, I would create something like this, I wouldn't have believed you, because it takes a really long time to get to that point. And I think just being a sponge of positive content, of podcasts, of, what are you curating your feed to look like? Are you curating it to be you comparing yourself to Instagram models or people who glorify, things that aren't in your authentic self? Are you curating, your surroundings with people who lift you up, or are you surrounding yourself with people who make you feel less than? And so just being mindful of that, and it doesn't need to be today, tomorrow, or next week, but being mindful and slowly shifting your energy into what aligns with what self-love means to you, right? And so it doesn't need to look like affirmations maybe, but it can look like putting yourself in a positive space, wanting to be the person that you want others to treat you as, be it for yourself.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely value in, kind of like we said earlier, doing a little trial and error to see what's really moving the needle for you. If affirmations in the mirror isn't doing the trick, try something else out.
Yeah.
I know that like for me with the whole I'm desirable thing, I think I really experientially rewired my belief about that once I was in a relationship.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I don't want people to think that like you have to depend on somebody outside of you to rewire your way of thinking about yourself. I think that people can be a mirror for you to discover things about yourself. So being in a relationship for me, because I had a partner who showed me I was desirable, it mirrored back to me the belief that I am desirable. The belief is in me.
Right.
It's just a matter of being able to access it, and to really like understand that it is a part of you. But oftentimes it's the judgments about our desirability or whatever it is that make us think it's inaccessible. So like, yes, I believe that I was undesirable, but really it's that I thought that desirable meant X, Y, and Z. Right. I thought desirable fit into a certain box. I thought being desirable was based on whatever I saw in other women, right? So I just want to make that point because I don't believe that these different affirmations are things that are not within us already. I think they are within us. Your strength, your lovability, your beauty, your worthiness, you have all that. Your smartness, your creative nature. Yeah. It's already in you.
Exactly.
But you got to figure out how you define those different things. How do you define beauty? How do you define being smart? Is it based on grades? Is it based on emotional intelligence? How do you define being desirable? Like, that's really the question that I think we have to ask ourselves.
That's true. Regardless on the stories that you're telling yourself, like we mentioned earlier, there is evidence for every story. It really just depends on what you choose to feed. And so they've always been within us this entire time. It's just a matter of accessing that.
Yeah. Well, I'm so happy that we got to have this conversation and shine a light, hopefully, for people who are struggling to really love themselves. I want to say that really it starts with accepting yourself, because you can't love yourself if you don't accept the various aspects of who you are. And there's so many intricacies and complexities to you as a human. And I would say that, like, self-love is a journey, and it's something that actually may evolve with time. You know, you may have days where you don't love yourself and days where you do. Like, it fluctuates. Loving yourself, self-love, the whole thing, it just fluctuates in your life. It might not ever be constant. So I love that these sweatshirts, when you wear them, you are reminded of the fact that, like, there's always something to love about yourself. And so if you're listening to this today, I think it'd be just a great way to close out the podcast is just by asking people truly, like, to think about, what is one thing that you could love about yourself? Even if it's hard, what's just one thing that you can appreciate yourself for?
Exactly. Yeah.
Because we can all pick one thing. Come on. We can do it.
Right.
And so I want you to just hold that with you for the rest of the day and night. Just whatever your answer is to that question, hold it with you and remind yourself of that just as you go on with your life. Do you have any last words that you want to share with people who are listening, other than obviously telling us how we can find Bolt Actve online?
Yeah, I mean, just going off of what you said and calling back to what we mentioned earlier of the beliefs that hold us back, I think that it's important to love and accept those parts of yourself as well, because at the end of the day, they're there to keep us safe. And so be gentle with yourself, be hard on yourself, but also be gentle with yourself at the same time. So finding that balance and just knowing what you need for each moment, each day, and just taking it day by day, I would say.
Thank you for sharing your wisdom and doing it so freaking clearly and maturely. So last thing, just tell us how to find you and your clothing company online.
Yeah, so I am at Riapatag on all platforms.
How do you spell that?
RIAPATAG. Okay. And for Bolt, that's BOLTACTIVE.com. And on Instagram, it's BOLTACT, no I, VE on Instagram. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, it's been awesome having you on. Our first time hanging out, and you freaking crushed it.
Thank you.
Love you, girl.
I love you too. Thank you for having me.